think we're coming to a general discussion now. Councillor Smith has got her hand up, so she can go first.
Thank you. I'm afraid I'm not going to be terribly brief, because I have several points to make. I think it is probably useful, very briefly, just to give a bit of history, not going back hundreds of years, but just a very brief bit of history in terms of what we've been trying to do, because it then leads into a few questions that I have that I'd like my colleagues to think about this evening. As Val Cornish mentioned earlier, there has been a change over recent years because we've been much more assiduous at looking at trees and seeing whether they are potentially dangerous. Disease trees, hopefully by and large, have now been dealt with, but it has left us with certain holes in various parts of green spaces. So there's a very specific issue that we've faced in recent years about replanting our trees that have been felled. And when I was Executive Councillor, there was an agreement that effectively, if a tree was felled, we would replant, that money was coming from a very limited budget that the active communities had, which was £7,000 a year for replanting, planting of any sort, and effectively all of that was being diverted for replanting trees. So the core money has been very limited for tree planting. The £50,000 here appears to give a great opportunity for planting. But I have a very specific question about funding, and it is one I think John Morgan's sort of getting to. We put aside £50,000 as the West Central Area Committee for planting. The consultation has been on a rather wide set of proposals, and respondents have rejected quite a few of the proposals, and yet we still seem to be spending the full £50,000. And there are at least 3 areas where the proposals are to do nothing at this stage, and they are F, M and J. But with J is a more specific comment that we will fell and replant if the trees become diseased. That's fine, but where is the money going to come from? Because it can't come from existing revenue because the money isn't there. And unless Councillor Country is able to magically rabbit out of a hat in the annual budget, I think that's going to be quite difficult. So I think we need to think about what we're doing in those areas where we said do nothing now, because we're leaving ourselves with no additional funding. I have a further concern that's been raised by some of the residents about the questionnaire, particularly in the areas of B and D. And that is very much what the questionnaire has actually asked and what the responses have been, or how they've been calibrated. Question 4 only gives 2 options: to fell all the remaining trees, or to, but both of them are about felling. And essentially, you don't have a choice to say, we don't want to fell any of these trees. When we look at further comments from residents, we see actually they do have further views. So I think we need to think about what, I think we need more options, and I'm not convinced that the, sorry, I've now got far too many bits of papers, and I've confused myself with them. I do apologise. Yes. Sorry. Really do apologise. So I had all my papers laid out, and I've waited for so long, not interviewed, but I now mislaid the crucial one that had a question on it. Right, yes, Councillor Kempton says come back to it. There is also D, which area D, question 8, where we seem to have a similar question. I'll come back and say we need to look at those again. I will come up with very specific questions, but I think the questionnaire does have a problem. I'll shut up now, go back through my papers, and come back when I sort myself out.
Yes, yes.
I just wanted to touch on funding, because Councillor Smith has raised this topic, and it is clear that the tree planting budget that we have is not adequate to meet the need that we have, and it's illustrated by some of the trees that we did remove from these open spaces have not been replaced over the course of the last 2 years. As I understand it, I think there are 6 to 8 of the trees that the tree planting budget has allocated some funds to replant, so it could be potentially over and above the 50,000 in terms of that amount of money. The second point is that clearly, we have a clear statement as a council that we are committed to replanting and additional planting of trees, and whilst it is challenged times in terms of the financial position of all public authorities, what I will seek to do during the budget cycle is discuss with the new head of service opportunity to move resources from elsewhere within my budget to meet additional tree planting. So hopefully there is scope for additional funds over the course of the coming year, 2 years, in terms of meeting this very important issue that the residents have highlighted.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillors. John Hipkin.
About half an hour ago, Councillor Cantrell seemed to indicate, I think I understood him right, that he was not averse to the idea that this might all now be put on hold, and a decision could be made next autumn. Now, I'm not at this moment saying whether I agree or not agree with that proposal, but if that is a serious possibility, might it not be sensible to make that the first matter for discussion? Because if we are going to delay by a further year, then a great many of the comments that I wish to make, and perhaps others want to make, would seem to be irrelevant.
Thank you. So I'll just make use of the chair to propose to the committee that we are not here to delay decisions tonight, and I think it's essential to press on with as much planting as we believe is appropriate now. Not to waste single seeds by delaying. Can I just ask for a show of hands that it is not our group wish to postpone decisions tonight? Those in favour of proceeding? Seven, Chair.
I would say I'm abstaining because I still think it's difficult issues.
Right. Okay. So, right. So, John, would you like to make some specific points?
I will make specific points, if I may. First of all, I'm extremely uncomfortable about this being a forum in which the fate of individual trees is being discussed and apparently decided. I found the level of discussion this evening extraordinarily technical in many respects, and I feel disqualified by my lack of expertise and technical knowledge from properly evaluating the contributions that have been made by people who are clearly more knowledgeable on the whole question about trees and our horticulture than I am. So, I'm unhappy about that. But putting the question of the fate of individual trees in individual areas on one side, I'd like to address a couple of questions which I think have to do with policy. And, Chair, at the risk of simply reiterating what has been said by others, I do think it needs to be stressed that the Council has a responsibility to manage its tree stock. I picked up from earlier information this evening that historically the balance of tree planting in the city is difficult, and that because of the heavy preponderance of plantings made a century ago, we have to think conscientiously about the future and how we're going to maintain the stock and to keep the variety that the city has become used to. I also want to say, if I may, a word in support of our officers, and this is not simply, a kind of internal council culture thing where we all stick up for one another. I thought that when and Ovia Ham answered the question concerning the variety of species that were being counted in the city, I thought her detailed and expert explanation of why certain species were not suitable and others might be and so on was an extraordinary example of how the staff who are responsible for trees in this city are not vandals. I've had emails from spiteful people who have talked about a kind of outbreak of vandalism by tree officers on the city council, and I absolutely resist on that accusation. And I think, you know, that we've had it demonstrated this evening beyond any question of doubt that our officers are as conscientious and knowledgeable as we could hope for, and that they are doing a conscientious and professional job in the management of the city's trees. I just want to say that when you look at the kind of net outcome of the proposals that are before us this evening, it seems that the number of trees to be felled is actually rather small, and that every one of them, which, you know, it is contemplated may have to be felled, we're already saying the protocol will come into operation, which means there will be further consultation on each one of these trees, unless I have got that wrong. Is that right?
Yes.
And I hear also that there is to be a net increase of a very considerable number. Now, when I saw this, I thought, hey, that's wonderful, because planting more trees is surely safeguarding the future. But I hear people saying, no, they don't want more trees. They get in the way of their view and all this kind of thing. So clearly this is a controversial matter. But for me, I must say, as a person not very expert in this area, I am pleased that the outcome of these proposals are that there will be more trees planted than are being felled, and that any tree that is being felled will be subject to further consultation. Now, may I deal with one last point? I do not want to simply dismiss the contributions which have been made this evening by people who are clearly concerned, love the city, love the trees in the city, and so on. I wish there was some way, I had reference to a seminar, I wish there was some way in which we could set up a small panel, rather like the design and conservation panel, of people in the city who have some sort of expertise, extra knowledge, extra care, extra representative authority, and that from time to time they might meet and they might advise us as a committee on the desirability or otherwise of proposals that are before us.
Thank you.